Ladies and gentlemen, this is an update on the Botham Jean case out there in Dallas. And this came out in Dallas News September 16th, 2018. Dallas officer Amber Geiger has vacated apartment at complex where she killed Botham Jean, management says. Ladies and gentlemen, you know why I think she moved out? I think she moved out because she did not want the people investigating this case to compare her apartment to Botham Jean, where she claimed she confused the two apartments. That's why I think she did it. Because then you would have been able to look at her apartment and say, wait a minute, this apartment don't look nothing like his. And remember, he had a red carpet outside of his door. And did she have a red carpet? Or did she have anything? Some people just don't have nothing in front of their door. So that's why I believe she abruptly leave, because you would have been able to compare those two apartments and clearly see that, wait a minute, her apartment didn't look anything like his. How does she confuse this? Even the outside of it don't look the same. That's why I think she left. Just like she scrubbed the internet of her social media accounts, trying to cover what her real background is in racism. That's why she did that. She scrubbed it because she knew as soon as everybody saw what she had out there, and they would have determined that she was clearly a racist. Okay, that's why she did it. But let's get into this article. Dallas police officer Amber Geiger has moved out of the Cedar apartment complex where she fatally shot 26-year-old Botham Jean on September 6th, a manager told residents in an email Sunday. WFAA-TV Channel 8 obtained a copy of the email, which states that management at that Southside Flats complex cannot comment on the shooting while an investigation is ongoing. However, we are able to confirm that the other resident involved has vacated her apartment and no longer resides at our community, the email reads. And here's the email that they sent to all of the residents. It's kind of cut off here, but let me see if I can click into it. Jason Whiteley. He's probably the property manager. Dear residents, once again, we extend our heartfelt sympathy to the family and friends and neighbors of Botham Jean. As you are likely aware, the shooting that occurred at Southside Flats on September 6th is still an ongoing investigation, and we are unable to comment on it at all. However, we are able to confirm that the other resident involved has vacated her apartment and no longer resides at our community. We appreciate those of you that have reached out to show your support. And it's just cut off right there. But that's the email that went out. It went out Sunday. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I think her police union and the Dallas Police Department advised her to move out. I really do. I think they knew her apartment looked nothing like his. And the only way she could keep everything in doubt is by moving out, so you could not compare those two apartments. I really believe that's why she moved out as quickly as she did. If they were doing a real investigation, she would not have been permitted to move out until the investigation was done. But you notice they let her move while the investigation is still in progress. I don't believe there's anybody but the police department behind this whole thing. They're trying to muddy up the waters. When a Southside Flat employee was reached by phone Sunday, she referred, questions about the shooting to the Dallas Police Department. An apartment manager, it did not immediately respond to email questions asking when Geiger moved out and whether she left voluntarily. Geiger, 30, has told authorities that she thought she was in her own apartment when she shot Jean, who she thought was burglarizing her apartment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's stop right there. If you're a cop and you saw someone in your apartment that didn't live there and you knew they were burglarizing it, wouldn't you tell them to put their hands up? You could have pulled your gun from the holster, aimed it at them, and say, "Stop, put your hands up," or tell them to get down on the floor. Why didn't she tell him that? If you saw someone in your apartment that didn't belong there and you're a cop, wouldn't you say, "Put your hands up," or tell them to get down on the floor? Instead of doing that, she went in that apartment and just started shooting immediately. Why didn't she ask him to identify himself? And you're a cop. See, that's why I'm not buying her story. Okay. It's unclear how Geiger got into the apartment. The accounts differ, listen to this, between the Dallas Police Department and Texas Rangers records. So the Dallas police got one account, the Texas Rangers got another. Shouldn't that tell you something ain't right? In an arrest warrant affidavit written by the Texas Rangers, police said Geiger had entered her key in the electronic with an electronic chip into the keyhole of Jean's apartment door. And let me tell you something, I used to program key fobs. I know exactly how they work. I know how to activate them. I know how to deactivate them. I used to do it all the time. When I was IT manager, part of my job was building security, which means you couldn't enter the building unless I programmed a key fob for you. And even within the building, there were certain parts of that building you couldn't get into if you were not personnel that worked in certain locations. Like, for example, where the CEOs and everybody were, you couldn't get back there unless you were part of that management team. And then we had the room where we had the servers. If you weren't part of IT and you worked in any other department, you would not have been able to use your key fob to get into the room where the servers were. So you can easily program these key fobs to only get into exclusively one room and nowhere else in the building. So there's no way she put that key fob in and it worked in his door. I'm just telling you, that's not even possible. But this is what's in the affidavit. Now, also, it says that the door was slightly ajar. So the force of putting her key inside pushed open the door. No, those doors are weighted. So they will automatically slam when you open and close them. It will slam on its own. You can't prop that door open unless you got an object wedged in between. We already saw how those doors open and closed. It is no way that door was propped open. It's no way. The Rangers account says Jean was across the room from Geiger during the encounter. The Dallas police officer told authorities she saw a large silhouette and gave verbal commands that were ignored before she fired her weapon twice, striking Jean in the torso. Well, that account differs from the people that were there. and said she was yelling, "Let me in, let me in." To me, if you stood outside that door yelling, "Let me in, yet let me in," you knew you weren't at your apartment. You knew. And that's right here. Jean's family and attorney don't trust Geiger's version of events that night. So Lee Merritt, the attorney for the family, says witnesses told him they heard knocking. So she knocked on the door and a woman saying, "Let me in," before they heard gunshots. So they're saying she was in the hall. She said, "Let me in." She got into the apartment, which he probably let her in. He probably was wondering who was on the other side of the door. And she shot him immediately. You know, even the people that are witnesses said they heard no commands. As soon as she got in the apartment, she shot him immediately. Now, she said she gave verbal commands. What were those commands? What were those commands? How come we have gone all this time and have not heard what these commands were that she gave to Botham Jean? Shooting, the St. Lucia native and Harding University graduate, was remembered at his funeral Thursday. His funeral is actually on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. I watched a little clip of it. As a man of great joy and one who encompassed the best of humanity, Geiger, who was hired by the Dallas Police Department in 2013, remains on administrative leave. She should be fired. She should be fired. She gave too many discrepancies in her story. Her story is not adding up, and all I see is a person constantly trying to cover her trail. That's all I see. I see one that's just trying to cover her trail. She covered up her social media, trying to scrub everything off. And now she abruptly moved out of her apartment. So you can't compare her apartment to his and say there's no way she could have made that mistake. And remember, the day before, she made a noise complaint against him. But even if that was the reason why she shot him, that should be murdered. You know, that should be a murder because, number one, nobody should die for that reason. That's stupid. Okay. If she had an issue with the noise, that's what the apartment manager is for. And if they didn't do nothing about it, they probably didn't do nothing about it because it was not really an issue. Because, you know, these people complain when there is no problem. And we see that with those bogus ass phone calls. They complain just for the damn idea of complaining. We have seen this many, 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 many times. We've seen the petty side of these folks. They are very petty and frivolous. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen, about her moving out of her apartment. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.